My name is Sophie, I'm 36 years old, and although I've been married to Jackson Hayes for 8 years, I've always felt like a stranger in his family. Last summer, when Jackson invited me to the Carter family's traditional barbecue in Redwood City, I hoped things would be different this time. But the moment I set my plate down on the long wooden table beneath the eucalyptus trees, my sister-in-law Ashley appeared with that condescending smile. In front of all the guests, Ashley leaned in just enough for everyone to hear. "If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice." The guests erupted in laughter, and even Jackson smiled awkwardly, his eyes full of embarrassment. My heart stopped in that instant. Slowly, I lifted the hamburger from my plate and said, "Try me." That very night I left, walking away from the red-tiled house and the judging stares behind me. When I moved into a small apartment in Berkeley, my chest felt on fire. I'd taken pride in my graphic design career, having built brands for dozens of cafes across the city, yet the thoughtless comments from my future mother-in-law, Eleanor, constantly forced me to prove myself. She praised my nimble fingers as if graphic design were merely a hobby. My father-in-law, Henry, would explain basic business concepts to me, even though I'd run my own company before ever meeting Jackson. During those first few months, I was consumed by shame and hurt. I told myself I'd sacrificed too much, leaving my best friend's home in Des Moines to attend Berkeley, giving up career opportunities to follow my husband to the quiet suburbs, but my spirit refused to be toyed with. Night after night I journaled every slight, every disdainful glance, every cruel remark. 2 years later I returned to the Carter clan, not as a timid daughter-in-law but as a featured digital artist at Oakland's Central Arts Center. Jackson, looking flustered, tried to hide his surprise when he saw me standing confidently among the crowd. A line stretched around the block, all eager to admire my artwork, from abstract expressions of forgotten emotions to portraits of women standing tall in pride. The psychological climax came when Ashley paused in front of my piece titled "The Power of Silence." I approached her with a gentle smile and said nothing more. Surprise flickered in her eyes, swiftly replaced by a grudging respect. The onlookers buzzed with praise for my talent, and Jackson remained silent, his gaze a mix of pride and regret. Then Henry appeared, gently placing a hand on my shoulder. "Tell me about your journey," he said. Applause filled the hall, like a triumphant symphony celebrating my return. Eleanor burst into tears, embraced me, and murmured apologies for the misunderstandings of years past. After the exhibition, Jackson and I strolled along the Jack London Square waterfront. He apologized for not having the courage to defend me before his family and vowed always to stand by and respect the real me. Watching the sunset, I realized life's trials are the crucible through which one's true worth emerges. In the end, I chose forgiveness, though I never forgot that lesson, the strength of self-confidence and perseverance. In my little apartment, I hung a painting inscribed with "Challenge Accepted," so each morning I wake reminded that every day offers a chance to prove my true value. When Jackson received an opportunity to expand his department, requiring frequent business travel across the United States, no one even asked if my career would suffer. Gradually, my roster of loyal clients dwindled to just a few, and I found myself confined to the cramped space of home, under the relentless scrutiny of Jackson's family. Last spring, I endured the pain of losing our baby in the 11th week. The physical pain was only the tip of the iceberg. The emotional agony cut deepest. Jackson was in Chicago for a conference and insisted on flying back to Oakland immediately. Yet he seemed relieved when I told him I was fine. Eleanor's bereavement flowers and condolence card arrived days late, bearing the cold words, "Perhaps it's not yet time for you to find stability." At a tea gathering, Ashley whispered a cruel remark. "I'm sure stress over your tiny client base must be the cause." I lowered my gaze at my teacup, my heart heavy. Only my sister Chloe flew in from Des Moines with homemade chicken soup and an empathetic ear. Her genuine love revealed the stark contrast of the Carter family's indifference, tearing away the facade I had buried so deep. Again, I swallowed my bitterness to keep the peace, accepting my isolation under my own roof. By the time the fateful summer barbecue rolled around, I was a faint shadow of the passionate artist I once was. My designs felt hollow, old friends drifted away, and my marriage seemed like a play without an audience. That morning, I spent 3 hours in the kitchen preparing my grandmother's strawberry cake recipe. Jackson was on an urgent call to finalize his schedule for Boston, instructing me to impress everyone with Dad's new cold smoke machine. I nodded and held the cake box tight, my spirit sinking as memories of past gatherings flooded back. Arriving at the Carter estate in Redwood City, I was dazzled by the bustling chefs and lively chatter. Henry stood on the front steps demonstrating his special wood-curing technique, while Eleanor gracefully drifted from group to group. I took a deep breath, straightened my expression, and carried the cake box toward the outdoor kitchen. Ashley called my name with that arch smile. "Sophie, what a bright dress. The kitchen's a bit crowded, but I'm sure you can find a spot." She steered Jackson ahead before I could respond, leaving me standing alone under invisible spotlights. I walked slowly into the kitchen, breathing in the familiar aroma of spices, recalling my own family's dinners. In that brief silence, I realized I was more than a decorative accessory in someone else's event. Under the warm yellow lights, I saw every ounce of exhaustion and hurt reflected in my eyes. My heart clenched, and I vowed, this time they would not hear the last of me. In the corner of the kitchen, I placed my hand on the cake box and whispered to myself, "From now on, Sophie is not just Jackson's wife. I am an artist, and I deserve respect." I smiled at the strawberry cake, the symbol of love and resilience, and prepared for the moment that would forever change this family dynamic. Just then, Eleanor glanced my way and said lightly, "You didn't need to bring anything. The bakery already handled it." She pointed toward a shelf stacked with imported cake boxes, her polite smile thin. I set mine among the glossy packages, as if to declare it unworthy of display. Stepping out of the kitchen, I overheard Eleanor murmur to a server, "Make room for Ashley's tiramisu in the center of the table." I sighed quietly, watching the clear favoritism shown to a cake far grander than mine. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of forced smiles and half-finished conversations. I tried talking to one of Jackson's cousins, but before I could speak, Eleanor whisked him away to meet a very important guest. I could only stand by in silence. When I offered to help arrange the buffet, they told me, "The caterers have it all planned." As I edged into a discussion about a new film, there was simply no space for my voice. Isabella, Lucas's wife of 2 years, was introduced as a brilliant pediatrician and showered with praise. Jealousy surged through me. Why was everyone so easily accepted while I had to work twice as hard for a scrap of approval? Still, I maintained my composure, swallowing the pangs of exclusion. Finally, Jackson found me after a morning spent with his Oakland partners. "Are you enjoying yourself?" he asked, pulling me over to the main dining table on the porch without waiting for my reply. I sat in silence, my gaze drifting over the lavish spread. I ended up between Uncle George, who was hard of hearing and oblivious to the drama, and an empty seat waiting for Ashley's return. Jackson sat across from me, chatting with Henry about Japanese management styles, his smile polite but distant. A cold hush settled over us all. When Ashley finally appeared, she placed a flawlessly arranged plate before me and launched into a story about seeing a celebrity at the gym. Every head turned to listen, even George, who probably only caught the last few words. I felt like a silent statue center stage. Gathering my courage, I spoke up. "I just finished the brand identity project for that new bakery in Soma. Their grand opening is next week." Ashley's eyes flickered coldly. "Oh, the one with the neon sign? I drove by the other day," she said dismissively. I took a deep breath and explained. "They wanted to preserve the building's historic character." Ashley shrugged dramatically. "If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would notice." The table exploded with laughter. Eleanor giggled behind her napkin, and Henry nodded, as if he'd been waiting for that moment. Jackson relaxed, pouring himself another beer. My cheeks burned, my hands turned ice cold. 8 years of pent-up insults rushed back in an instant, but I did not cry, run away, or make a scene. Instead, I picked up the hors d'oeuvre on my plate, raised it like a challenge bell, looked Ashley squarely in the eyes, and said firmly, "Challenge accepted." A moment passed, and silence enveloped us before surprised applause began rippling from the far end of the table. In that instant, I realized I wasn't just standing up for myself. I was igniting a spark for everyone who had ever felt invisible. There was a brief lull around the buffet. Then Eleanor's sweet voice rang out. "Who'd like Mr. Henry's flank steak?" Laughter and chatter sprang back to life as if nothing had shifted. I stepped back into a corner of the yard, watching how they moved so comfortably in their world of assumed privilege. Every approving glance exchanged between Jackson and Ashley spoke volumes. I noticed Jackson chatting easily, glancing my way with a polite half-smile. Inside me, I quietly catalogued every cutting remark, every dismissive look, and all the times they treated me as mere background. Yet my inner voice thundered, "You deserve so much more." On the drive home, the car was hushed except for soft music playing from the dash. Jackson scrolled through his Boston trip emails, occasionally reading a subject line aloud while I stared out the window, recalculating the course of my future. Pulling into the driveway, he asked, "Everything okay? You've seemed off since lunch." I paused, choosing my words carefully. Ashley said if I vanished tomorrow, no one would notice. "You think that's normal?" He sighed, unbuckled his seatbelt, and said, "Don't dwell on this, she's just joking." Inside the house, I sat under the hallway light, eyes fixed on our wedding photo. I remembered the passionate girl who walked into her first design interview wide-eyed and confident. I recalled sleepless nights in my Berkeley design studio, pouring my heart into every line and color. Now, after 8 years of invisible sacrifices, that fire felt all but extinguished. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I quietly slipped out of bed, determination stirring within me. I opened my laptop and began hunting for an apartment in Portland, where Chloe lives. Bank statements, rental listings, bus schedules, airfare estimates. I carefully recorded every detail in a new file. I whispered to myself, "I'm going to rebuild my life from scratch." Finally, I called Ashley, my college friend who's always had my back. When she heard the tremor in my voice, "I need your help with something huge," she replied without hesitation. "Tell me now." 3 hours later, Ashley arrived with hot coffee, packing tape, and cardboard boxes, her eyes shining with steady resolve. We sorted my belongings quickly, favorite clothes, vital documents, irreplaceable mementos, and my designed workstation. I carefully wrapped my childhood journal where I'd written memories with my mother, and my pen tablet, the symbol of who I am. Ashley smiled and said, "Anything that doesn't fit I'll keep safe for you." That afternoon, my Prius, packed with the pieces of my life, sat at the curb. The late-day sun seemed to spotlight a new hope. I locked my apartment door and silently thanked the courage, friendship, and inner voice that propelled me. As I started the engine, I knew ahead lay not just freedom, but a journey to reclaim my true worth. Before Ashley climbed into her silver SUV, she hugged me tight and whispered, "Call me when you're settled. I'm so proud of you, Sophie." In the quiet of the home that had been my shelter for 5 years, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote Jackson a brief letter. I explained that I needed time to rethink our marriage, and stated that I would only take what was rightfully mine, having settled all shared bills. I asked for no contact during this period and kept my destination secret. Before leaving, I placed my wedding ring atop the letter, alongside a typed copy of Ashley's taunt, complete with date, time, and location. In that moment, I retrieved our wedding photo from the files, and whispered, "Goodbye," before walking away without a backward glance. Driving out of suburban Redwood City felt terrifying and exhilarating all at once. My heart raced as I took deep breaths to steady the emptiness. With each mile, my spirit lightened, as though I were shedding years of being undervalued. Crossing out of California, I felt a fresh breeze of freedom. That night I checked into a modest Portland hotel, paying with my own secret credit card. The room was small and simple, nothing luxurious but spotless, a soothing contrast to the Carter family's standards. I texted Ashley and Chloe I'm safe, then I turned off my phone. The empty closet and the letter on my kitchen table would greet Jackson in the morning. The silence afterward didn't bring satisfaction or guilt, just a strange peace. The next morning my phone buzzed with Jackson's messages. Shock, anger, worry, then fury. "Where are you? Answer me. Listen, the Boston trip is coming up. You're being selfish." There was no apology or acknowledgement, just demands that I come home so we can talk. I texted my mother a quick note confirming I was okay and asking for privacy, then shut off my phone again. At my laptop I drafted long-term plans. Find a long-term rental, compare Northgate and Capitol Hill prices, contact landlords. I reminded myself, challenge accepted. Portland welcomed me with days of rain, as if washing away the past. Chloe arranged a tiny studio for me in Alameda, with a window overlooking the Willamette River and creaky wood floors. The cramped space might have felt confining, but instead it cradled me like a safe cocoon. I set up my designed workstation by the window, watching the raindrops fall and feeling the breath of a new life. The faint glow from the building above erased my worries. For the first time in 8 years, I woke up knowing each morning is another chance to rebuild who I truly am. This fateful moment wasn't merely a departure, it was the beginning of a journey to reclaim my true worth and voice. Sophie was no longer the silent woman standing on the sidelines of someone else's story. I was the author of my own life. The building wasn't luxurious, but Chloe proudly pointed out its central location on Capitol Hill. She helped me hoist my suitcase up the narrow stairs, apologizing for the tight space but reassuring me, "The landlord here never asks too many questions." I smiled, smoothing out the well-worn but sturdy kitchen table, and thought to myself, at last, I have a place that's truly mine. The first week passed in practical tasks. I opened a bank account at a local credit union, arranged for mail to be forwarded to Ashley so no one could trace me, and got a new phone number with a Portland area code to erase old contacts. I revised my freelancer profiles to remove any Carter family connections. Every step was driven by firm resolve. Jackson's messages shifted over 2 weeks from anger to pleading. "I really think we can work this out, just come back." I stayed silent, not out of cruelty, but to keep myself safe. Every time I contemplated hitting reply, I remembered the cold laughter around that barbecue table and the countless times I'd been pushed aside. Then Ashley posted a cryptic message on Instagram, "Family comes first. You can't choose who stands by you, but you can choose how you live." Heart reactions flooded in, and Eleanor called my mother with earnest concern, fishing for details. Isabella, Lucas's wife, texted, "If you ever need to talk, I'm here." I ignored it all, focusing instead on rebuilding. Ashley packed the remainder of my life into unmarked boxes and shipped them to Portland. I found a therapist specializing in family conflict and marital trauma, scheduling weekly sessions. At first I was hesitant, but by the third appointment, Dr. Lewis said Ashley's words were just a trigger, not the cause. "Tell me when you first realized you were being belittled." That simple prompt unleashed memories of achievements downplayed, ideas overlooked, and Jackson's complicit silence. By the second month, I had 3 steady design clients through online platforms, editing ebooks and creating social media templates. It wasn't intensely creative work, but it gave me stability. Then, on a rainy afternoon in Capitol Hill, I walked into a cafe and was drawn to a vibrant mural. The barista noticed me admiring it. The owner hired a local artist. When I set down my latte, she added, "She's looking for someone to design their menu and advertising posters, right?" Within an hour, I was seated across from Vivian Marshall, the cafe owner, her hair streaked with silver, her voice as bold as her espresso. "You don't need to show me your resume," Vivian said, waving away the tablet I'd prepared. "Show me what you've made, because passion can't be faked." I hesitated, then opened a folder of experimental designs I'd abandoned years ago. Each piece bold, colorful, unmistakably me. Vivian studied them, zooming in on details, then looked up with cool blue eyes. "You've been hiding your talent," I admitted. "I haven't drawn like this in a long time." She raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" That simple question landed like a punch, and I found myself recounting how my creativity was suppressed to meet family expectations, how my artistic voice was replaced by silence. We sat in the cafe as rain pattered against the windows and coffee filled the air. Vivienne smiled. "I want to work with you, not because you're anyone's ex-wife, but because your work has genuine value." In that moment, I realized I wasn't just backstage support. I could shine center stage in my own life. Vivian listened until I finished, then nodded. "I'll hire you for the menu project, but with one condition." I frowned. "What is it?" She leaned forward. "Each week, bring me one personal piece of art. Unfinished is fine. Just keep rediscovering your creative voice." From then on, Vivienne became more than a client. She was a mentor who challenged my limits with honest feedback and unexpected encouragement. Through her, I connected with San Juan Coffee's bakery chain and a few Capitol Hill boutiques. These projects let me contribute without draining my energy. Meanwhile, Jackson's messages grew fewer. I filed for divorce through an attorney and ignored his unanswered calls. The property settlement moved quickly and Jackson gradually let go. Months after starting my new life, I scrolled through his social media. A photo of him with a woman I didn't know at a work event, followed by Henry's proud emoji-filled comment. Ashley posted a family dinner snapshot with the caption, "Their loss." That once piercing remark now felt liberating. 7 months after I left, the divorce decree took effect. Jackson signed without protest. We split our assets evenly and neither party paid alimony. His final note read, "I don't understand, but I won't stand in your way." That night, I stood before the mirror and chopped off the long hair he once loved, cutting it into a short bob, my face illuminated by a newfound clarity and confidence I'd long hidden. By the 8th month, my design work had grown enough that I rented a desk at the Hive Studio, an artist and startup hub in Northgate. For the first time in years, I had colleagues who listened and debated on equal footing. As the 2nd anniversary of my departure from Redwood City approached, I no longer needed Facebook to track the Carters. They were characters in a chapter I'd closed, no longer influencing my new life. Instead, I was busy rebranding the Soma District Artisan Bakery and preparing a talk for the Portland Design Summit. 2 years after Ashley's cruel comment, Sophie was no longer invisible. I'd built a life where my talents were recognized, my voice heard instead of drowned out, and, most importantly, I'd found my passion again. The challenge hadn't just been accepted, it had become the launchpad for me to shine on my own life's stage. The first email from Westwood Creative arrived exactly 50 weeks after that fateful BBQ. The subject line was simple, "Seeking designer for national campaign," but when I read the message, my heart clenched. "Sophie, your work for Rainier Artisanal Foods made a strong impression on us. We're developing a campaign for Sheffield consumer brands and believe your style is perfect. Let's meet early next week." Sheffield Consumer Brands is a subsidiary of Caldwell Marketing Group. Henry, Jackson's father. I couldn't help but feel suspicious. Called Vivienne, my advisor and companion over the past year, and explained every detail. She analyzed the situation and said it could very well be a genuine opportunity. Your campaign was praised in 3 industry journals. But the timing is curious. I sighed. So the question is whether they know about the Caldwells or not? Vivienne chuckled softly. What truly matters is whether this project is worth investing your passion and risk. I asked Westwood for more information and learned they wanted to redesign the packaging for Sheffield's entire organic line, plus a long-term brand management contract. Their proposed budget was double anything I'd ever signed in Portland. After 4 days of consideration, I decided to attend the preliminary meeting. If it was a trap, I'd confront it head-on. If it was real, I wouldn't let the past hold my future back. At our first meeting, Nathan, the creative director at Westwood, revealed nothing about my history with the Caldwells. We discussed design concepts, timelines, and budget, professionally and clearly. When I asked about the client's involvement, he simply said Sheffield's leadership would approve key milestones. I immediately locked in the project, setting firm boundaries for communication channels and approval processes. 4 weeks passed smoothly. My initial sketches were well received and there were no delays. Not a hint of Caldwell appeared in any exchange. Then Westwood informed me that Sheffield Consumer Brands would unveil the new identity at the Marketing Innovation Gala, held at the Arlene Schnitzer Concert Hall in Portland. As lead designer, I was encouraged to attend, an ideal chance to cement my position after reviving my career. In my session with Dr. Lewis, she said, "You have 3 options: decline to avoid trouble, attend but avoid the Caldwells, or attend and engage on your own terms." I paused, then asked, "If you were in my shoes today, what would you do?" She smiled. "That question isn't for me, it's for today's Sophie." The next morning, I confirmed my attendance and scheduled a fitting with the stylist Chloe had recommended. I dedicated part of my Sheffield advance to an outfit that was both armor and personal statement. That evening, the gala arrived with surprising calm. Symphonic overtures filled the hall as I stepped onto the red carpet. My expression was cool, my gaze unwavering, signaling that Sophie was no longer the woman weaving discreetly through the crowd. She was a formidable design professional. This moment wasn't just a project victory. It was a spectacular comeback proving I deserved the role I had earned. Later, in my hotel room, I stood before the mirror in an emerald green jumpsuit, fitted at the waist and gently flaring at the legs. My bob was streaked with subtle caramel highlights that caught the light. The heels I'd chosen not only added height, but steadied every confident step. The biggest transformation showed in my eyes, no trace of anxiety or apology, only readiness for whatever the night might bring. I left my room and headed back to the Arlene Schnitzer Concert Hall, where the grand lobby was adorned with warm golden lighting and simple white hydrangea arrangements. Before I could take a sip of my cocktail, Nathan appeared and introduced me to the marketing directors and investors. My name badge clipped to my blazer, business cards neatly tucked away, I discussed design trends and market challenges with professional assurance, far removed from my tentative no thank you responses of the past. While speaking with the editor from Design Portland magazine, I sensed the room shift. I didn't need to look back to know the Caldwells had arrived. Henry's hearty laugh confirmed it. Instead of retreating, I finished my point and politely excused myself to the bar for a bottled water. At the bar, I observed Henry and Eleanor near the entrance, surrounded by admiring looks. Ashley wasn't in sight, only Jackson, still in his suit but looking thinner and more adrift than I remembered. Our eyes met across the room. He blinked, as if to speak, then fell silent. I held his gaze, no smile, no frown, and raised my glass in a confident salute to the bartender. Moments later, Henry approached, while I was reviewing the event program. He cleared his throat. "Sophie, what a surprise to see you here." I nodded politely. "I'm the lead designer for Sheffield's organic rebrand." He looked momentarily taken aback by my composure. "They hired Westwood, right?" he asked. I replied in a professional tone, "Yes." "Market tests have shown very positive feedback." Henry nodded, his gaze drifting over my jumpsuit, then lingering on my face with a mix of surprise and admiration. "Your work has come back to your true self," he said quietly. I offered a slight smile. It's not evolution, it's rediscovering my authentic voice. Henry dipped his head and walked away, presumably to inform Eleanor. I returned to the Westwood team, quietly joining the discussion on the final presentation steps. In that moment, amid the bright lights and the crowd's chatter, I realized the greatest challenge wasn't facing the Caldwells, it was conquering myself, and I had succeeded. In the dim glow backstage, I saw Henry whispering to Eleanor, and in that moment her eyes swept the room until they found me. Westwood had arranged for me to present mid-program, and as Nathan guided me toward the wings, Victoria unexpectedly appeared. Surprise flickered across her face before she hurriedly guessed, "Sophie, nobody told me you'd be working on this project." I answered calmly, "I'm collaborating with Westwood Creative." Nathan introduced us. Victoria Caldwell, Henry's daughter, and extended his hand. "Pleased to meet you." Then he leaned in and murmured to me, "Sophie, your work is impressive." The presentation flowed seamlessly. I explained my design philosophy, consumer engagement strategies, and the organic rebrand campaign. Applause punctuated each key point. From the stage, I caught sight of the Caldwell family in the front row, Eleanor's expression poised, Henry nodding approval, and Victoria whispering beside her. Jackson lingered behind them, his gaze on me a swirl of emotions. After I concluded, I was surrounded by compliments and business cards. New opportunities and connections awaited. It was the sweetest victory, earned by my own skill. As the crowd drifted toward the evening reception, Jackson edged through to reach me. He looked at me, hands nervously clasped behind his back. "You were fantastic," I nodded. "Thank you." He hesitated. "I didn't know you were in Portland," I replied. "That was my choice." He softened, then confessed, "Your presentation was impressive. You've always been talented." I offered a steady smile. "I'm not just talented, I am talent." A hush settled between us as he poured out memories and regrets. "I've thought a lot about what happened. I miss you." Instead of triumph, I felt calm. My self-worth didn't hinge on his remorse. When he asked if I'd grab coffee after the seminar, I agreed gently. "I can spare 30 minutes. Just then, Eleanor joined him, her polite smile tinged with concern. "Sophie, it's wonderful to see you shine." I nodded and murmured, "Wishing you well." Walking into the shimmering lights, I understood that my journey of self-affirmation continued. But this time, I wasn't alone, and I was ready to write my next chapter. Eleanor leaned in, her courteous smile unchanged. "Sophie, we've missed you at family gatherings. No one makes strawberry cake like you do." The old Sophie might have welcomed a peace offering, but now I merely nodded. "Interesting to hear you say that," I reminded her. "Last time my cake went to the storage while Victoria's tiramisu sat center table." Her smile faltered for a moment before regaining composure. "Just a small misunderstanding." "Many small misunderstandings over 8 years," I replied calmly. Before she could respond, the MC announced that the buffet was ready. I gave a polite nod and slipped away to join the Westwood table not far off, where soft lighting and professional chatter awaited. The evening passed without further confrontation. I caught Jackson watching me thoughtfully from across the room. When the event ended, I declined the after-party invitation and returned to my hotel alone, savoring the quiet. Standing by the window, watching Portland's lights twinkle, I realized I'd never felt more grown. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains as I prepared for Sheffield's workshop, eager and confident. In the cozy conference room, chairs arranged in a circle, I laid out my materials on the presenter's table, took a deep breath, and prepared to inspire the audience. Reviewing my final slides, I noticed Henry and Nathan conversing at the refreshment table, serious but relaxed. Henry nodding as he evaluated mock-ups. I smiled inwardly. Now, I control my own story. Victoria entered holding a perfectly brewed coffee, her cool demeanor masking friendliness. "Good morning, Sophie. Nathan speaks very highly of you." I replied quietly, "He's right. Westwood has been incredibly supportive." Surprise flickered across her face. "I didn't expect you to have established yourself in Portland so firmly. Last night's presentation was remarkable." I thanked her with composed grace, neither overly excited nor aloof. Victoria leaned against the table, her gaze sharp. My father is considering bringing all Sheffield work in-house after the campaign. He's very pleased with the direction so far. Her words implied that my efforts might soon be overshadowed. My heart clenched, but I smiled resolutely. I look forward to negotiating creative ownership terms. Victoria narrowed her eyes but offered no rebuttal. I walked away, leaving her in uncomfortable silence. The workshop proceeded smoothly. I presented my vision for the organic rebrand and solutions for design copyright protection. Heads nodded in approval, and Nathan took diligent notes. Pride swelled in me. The final challenge had become the moment I proved that no one could eclipse my value. At the close, the audience applauded warmly. I gathered my materials and stepped off stage with a light heart. Sophie had not only met her goals but also established safeguards for her creative rights. Most importantly, I showed that when I disappeared from their world, I shone brightly in my own. Eleanor's gaze flickered when I mentioned creative rights. "That's Henry's prerogative with Sheffield," she said softly. "However," I responded evenly, "Westwood has clear provisions for crediting the designer. Nathan is meticulous about protecting his team's work." She fell silent, frowning thoughtfully. When the facilitator called everyone back to their seats, the discussion closed with professional nods, a stark contrast to past tense confrontations. The workshop resumed with market and consumer demographic analyses, and my segment on digital integration strategy preceded the lunch break. I stepped onto the dais once more, spotting Jackson quietly slipping into the last row. He'd timed it to catch my moment. I outlined how interactive packaging and seamless digital connectivity would function, every word laced with the confidence I'd forged over the year. The Q&A was lively. When Henry, seated in the front row, asked about rollout milestones, I recited the agreed-upon timeline with Sheffield's team. As the crowd dispersed for lunch, Jackson tried to approach, only to be waylaid by a Sheffield executive with pressing concerns. I excused myself to get fresh air in the hotel courtyard. Before I could sit, Eleanor appeared and took the stone bench beside me, uninvited. "You've always known how to disappear at the right moment," she observed. I met her gaze and replied, "I simply find silence when I need it." Her eyes studied me, gauging the change. She sighed. "Family is complicated, Sophie. There are rules, traditions that have endured for a century." I held my ground. "I spent 8 years conforming, 8 years forcing myself into a mold that wasn't mine." Eleanor was silent a moment, then admitted, "Perhaps we didn't welcome you sincerely enough." She glanced at the empty seat beside us, but vanishing without explanation. "It was dramatic, don't you think?" I lifted my chin. I wrote Jackson a letter and settled every financial obligation. My decision was simply to protect my mental health. "Where's the drama in that?" Eleanor frowned, her composure cracking. "Jackson was in pain." I smiled gently. He found it inconvenient. Pain and inconvenience aren't the same. Silence fell again before I added, "I'm not here to weigh suffering. I'm here because I excel at this work, and my value deserves the Sheffield campaign." Eleanor's expression shifted, if not fully to respect, then to newfound understanding. She offered a soft acknowledgement. "You've always been resilient," I replied, "and I will continue to be." With that final nod, I stood and left the courtyard, the painful dialogue complete, making room for my next journey. Eleanor leaned back, gaze distant. "Will you attend the closing reception tonight?" I answered simply, "Yes. Westwood has reserved a table." She nodded pensively. "Their salmon is excellent." The mundane comment, as if genuine concern, caught me off guard. We returned to the workshop room, each resuming our seats. The afternoon focused on implementation strategies, and I participated actively yet maintained professional distance, neither avoiding nor seeking out the Caldwells. When the session ended, Jackson finally maneuvered through the crowd, his eyes uncertain. "Coffee still?" I smiled. "Yes." There's a cafe in the lobby. In the dim backstage glow, I spotted Henry leaning toward Eleanor, and in that instant, her gaze swept the crowd until it landed on me. Westwood had slotted me to present mid-program, and as Nathan guided me toward the wings, Victoria suddenly appeared. Surprise flickered on her face before she hurriedly guessed, "Sophie, nobody told me you'd be on this project." I answered evenly, "I'm working with Westwood Creative." Nathan quickly introduced us, Victoria Caldwell, Henry's daughter, then extended his hand. "Pleased to meet you." Leaning in, he murmured to me, "Your work is impressive." The presentation flowed without a hitch. I explained my design philosophy, outlined consumer engagement strategies, and unveiled the organic rebrand campaign. Each key point ended to enthusiastic applause. From the stage, I saw the Caldwell family in the front row. Eleanor composed, Henry nodding in approval, Victoria whispering behind them, his eyes fixed on me, conflicted. When I finished, I was immediately surrounded by praise and business cards, new opportunities and connections promised on every side. It was the sweetest triumph, earned by my own skill. As the audience drifted toward the evening reception, Jackson finally made his way to me. He looked me in the eye, hands nervously clasped behind his back. "You were incredible," he said. I nodded. "Thank you." He hesitated. "I didn't know you were in Portland." I replied that was my choice. His expression softened, then he admitted, "Your presentation was amazing. You've always been talented." I offered a steady smile. "I'm not just talented, I am talent." A hush fell between us as he confessed his regrets. "I failed to protect you. From Victoria, from Mom, even from the expectation that you'd just adapt." I remained silent, nodding. "You did." He swallowed, then let out an odd laugh. "I still remember when you said, 'Challenge accepted.' I didn't understand then, but now, I see you declared your independence from all of us." We talked for over an hour, longer than the 30 minutes we'd planned, about how our family changed in my absence. His loneliness under Victoria's scrutiny, and my own quest to rediscover myself. When our coffees were gone, he looked at me hopefully. "Do we still have a chance?" I paused, recalling how he once was my whole world, then smiled gently. "Not right now, but maybe someday." Our conversation ended in the fading light of the hotel lobby, leaving me feeling both peaceful and poised on the brink of a new, promising chapter. The only sound in the quiet space was the clink of his cup as I said, "I think we both needed to become new people." Jackson's eyes softened and he nodded. "You've always been stronger than I thought." I answered softly, "We just needed different circumstances to prove it." We shared a gentle hug, pure and unburdened by our past roles, closing that chapter with care. As Jackson walked away, I realized I genuinely wished him a life worthy of him, no longer as an extension of the Carters. The last time I saw Victoria was when I was gathering my portfolio in the workshop room. She entered with a determined stride. "I have something I need to ask straight up," she said. I nodded, curiosity and caution mingling. "Go ahead." She cut to the chase. "Did you know this project involved my family?" I answered honestly, "Not at all. I only discovered the Caldwell Marketing Group connection after Westwood Creative offered me the contract." Victoria looked up, weighing my sincerity. She continued, "And even after you found out, you didn't back out?" I smiled. "Why would I? I'm exceptionally good at my job. This project needed exactly my skills and aesthetic. My family benefiting is just coincidence." Victoria frowned. "It's a strange coincidence that exactly 2 years after you vanished you reappear to take on our company's work." I shrugged. Life rarely aligns so perfectly, but if it did, yes. "It's a coincidental opportunity," she sneered. "I don't buy convenient coincidences. Any other explanation?" I met her gaze. "Would you believe I spent a year planning, rebuilding my career, and forging relationships with agencies unconnected to your family just to land this project?" You're giving me more credit than is reasonable." Victoria fell silent, for the first time showing a flicker of hesitation. "When I mocked you, I thought it was just a joke. I didn't expect you to actually leave." I replied calmly, "It wasn't just a joke. It was what you implicitly told me for 8 years. That I was worthless, forgettable, unimportant. I came here to prove there are places where I matter." She pursed her lips, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Greg hasn't been the same since you left." I answered firmly, "Greg found his own path, and so did I. We reconciled in the only way that mattered, acknowledging our marriage's reality and finding peace when it ended." Victoria nodded slowly, accepting my finality. As she turned to leave, she paused and said, "Your presentation yesterday was outstanding. I'll have to say that, whoever you are." Her professional compliment, from someone who once scorned me, was the ultimate vindication of my journey to reclaim my worth. I thanked Victoria quietly, without fanfare or denial. Stepping out into the corridor to get ready for the closing reception, I felt an unexpected lightness. I had faced each Caldwell family member not as the doubted outsider of years past, but as a confident professional with clear boundaries. My old family no longer dictated my life. They were simply people with strengths and flaws of their own. The final reception went smoother than I could have imagined. Westwood colleagues at one table, the Caldwells at another, natural distance without any forced avoidance. When a colleague introduced me to Henry as the designer behind Sheffield's new identity, he nodded politely. Eleanor happened upon me at the dessert station and complimented my dress. I smiled and thanked her. Most notably, Victoria presented a slide of new trends featuring one of my works with clear credit, public recognition I never thought possible. At the end, I exchanged cards with potential clients, confirmed next steps with Nathan, and greeted industry peers. Jackson approached to wish me safe travels and genuine congratulations. I left the event not with triumphant proclamations, but with quiet satisfaction, having reclaimed my professional identity and personal freedom. A month later, I met Vivienne at her Capitol Hill cafe. Through the window, the Portland rain fell softly. "The Sheffield campaign officially launches next week," she said with a smile, pouring more coffee. I nodded. Early feedback has been surprisingly positive. They're even discussing expanding into other product lines. Vivian observed, "From the underling Carter daughter-in-law to a sought-after resource. What a metamorphosis." I smiled. Life sometimes has its own clever symmetry. This Sheffield project wasn't just a career milestone, it helped me attract new contracts, letting my authentic design voice shine instead of feeling constrained. I took the initiative to set up strict contract terms to protect my intellectual property. My divorce went more smoothly than expected. Jackson was fair in dividing assets and didn't complicate the process. We haven't kept in direct contact, but our lawyers report that the cooperation remains professional. One afternoon, while walking along the Willamette River waterfront, I received word that Sheffield wants to sign a long-term brand management contract. Joy washed over me. It's proof I've made a powerful comeback. From vanished to reimagined, I turned disappearance into a springboard for greater heights. Back at the shared Northgate studio, where I rent my desk among fellow creatives, I gazed at a new concept sketch on my screen. Sophie was no longer a peripheral shadow. She was the protagonist of her own life story. And the greatest wonder, I hadn't just proven my worth, I'd shown that when you disappear from others' world, you can shine brilliantly in your own. I chose to keep my grandmother's engagement ring as my sole keepsake, instead of the upgraded diamond from the Carter family that Jackson had persuaded me to accept. And no one contested it. My sessions with Dr. Lewis continue but now occur only every other week. They've evolved from coping with lost shock to exploring healthy future relationships and self-discovery. "I'm not going back to who I was," Dr. Lewis told me in our final session. "I'm becoming a new version of myself, integrating the experience without letting it define me." her words echo as I rebuild my life from the ground up. I'm not restoring my former self, but blending youthful passion with the boundaries and wisdom forged by challenge. Last weekend, my college friend Ashley visited me in Portland. "Your smile is different now," she observed as we strolled through Forest Park. "It comes from your core, not just your mouth." I laughed. Odd, but accurate. I've started speaking up in creative team meetings without over-preparing, going on casual dates without rushing into serious labels, and even joining the community garden on Northgate Avenue, finding unexpected joy in gardening. Each small change acts like a puzzle piece, restoring my free, vibrant identity. A new friend appeared. Isabella, Lucas Carter's wife. We first met when she reached out for me to design flyers for the free pediatric clinic where she volunteers. Our initial coffee turned into a candid conversation about feeling like outsiders in their families, and the mutual respect born of shared experiences. "Ashley Caldwell is taking a parenting class now," Isabella confided over soup on a drizzly afternoon in the Pearl District. "She's pregnant and determined not to repeat old patterns." I nodded, glad for my former sister-in-law's newfound awareness. 8 weeks after the conference, I wandered through the stalls at Northgate's farmers market. Unexpectedly, I heard Ashley's voice. She was choosing artisanal cheese. Her pregnancy silhouette was soft, a contrast to her formerly rigid style. We chatted about heirloom tomatoes and Sheffield's next campaign. There was no tension, just two people who'd once been estranged, now sharing our own paths. I sensed a small reconciliation in Ashley's eyes. Then Ashley asked directly, "Did you learn about my family connection before or after you signed the contract?" I answered calmly, "After, once the contract was finalized. By then I'd already recognized the value of my work." Ashley fell silent, nodding as if she'd discovered a truth. "You're right that appreciation depends on context," she murmured. "Now I truly see you can't be cast aside." Our market encounter felt like an open-ended period, closing misunderstandings but also hinting at a new chapter. Sophie was no longer the lone woman in the Carter family, but the storyteller of her own life. Victoria, too, adjusted her purse with a shy glance. "I'm discovering something similar as I prepare for motherhood. Everyone has their advice on how I should change, who I should become." I nodded. "Circumstances shape us but need not define us." Victoria paused, then admitted quietly, "That parenting class Isabella mentioned, it made me realize so many patterns I'd accepted as normal without question." I smiled. Self-awareness is powerful. Victoria hesitated, then confessed in a rare gentleness, "I don't want my child ever to feel they must disappear to be noticed." Her admission revealed a deep self-reflection I never imagined possible. I didn't rush to forgive. Our past was complex, but I placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "That's a good start." We parted without promises to reconnect, just sharing an authentic moment between two grown-ups. Back home, carrying my tote of market produce, I reflected on the strange journey that had carried me from the Carter BBQ to this moment. Victoria's offhand challenge, "If you disappeared, no one would notice," had become a catalyst for profound transformation. I'd vanished from a world of humiliation to re-emerge where my value is recognized. I let go of a family demanding conformity to build a community celebrating authenticity. I traded the safety of submissiveness for the unpredictable adventure of personal freedom. Last week I closed on a modest Willamette River cottage, not luxurious by Carter's standards but perfect for me, purchased entirely with my own income. As I arranged my favorite artwork and hung prints I love, I realized I was building not just a home, but a genuine life of my own. Ironically, the challenge, "If you disappeared," helped me come into sharp focus for friends, colleagues, and most importantly, myself. That evening, as Portland's city lights reflected on the water, I opened my journal and wrote, "Sometimes you have to disappear from someone else's story to discover your own." The strongest response to feeling invisible isn't demanding others see you, it's finding your own spotlight, no external validation required. Because living fully in your own life makes outside approval redundant. The girl who once brandished a hamburger in challenge could never have imagined this path. The woman writing these lines cannot return to who she was, and in that transformation there is no tragedy, only triumph. The most enduring victory is reclaiming your own life. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone's cruel words spurred you to make a life-changing decision? Share your story in the comments. If mine resonates, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that sometimes walking away is the bravest choice you can make. Thank you for following my journey. Remember, your worth is never determined by those who can't see it,